Hi, I'm Rob. I make you better, that's what I do. In this second video of overcoming dyslexia, I'm going to talk about the protocol itself and the feedback you have to learn to do. And you don't need to be an expert. You just have to follow instructions, which is important obviously, because otherwise I wouldn't talk about it. So what you're going to do to work with your kid is you're going to establish a baseline. When you establish the baseline, that's going to be a success thing because it's all going to circulate around that. Okay? So what is the baseline? Well, you're going to print out, if you like, or write the word cat or something like that. Very short word. That's important. And I'm going to use the word cat here as an example through this video. So what you want to do is ask them, show them the, so what you do is that first, show your kid this in front of them. You know what this is? And they say, yeah, this is cat. Alright, spell it. Then you put it down like that. Show them the word, put it down. Ask them to spell it out loud. So they spell it C-A-T. And what you do when you did, what I did there was to spell it C, then there's a little bit of a break, a little bit of a space between the C and the A-T. That space doesn't exist here. It only exists in your head or in the dyslexic cat, right? As you know, I also started to spell a word in the previous video. O is the next letter in that word. And you understand if you watch the first video that your brain goes, what? Because your brain is still trying to comprehend the word, right? So when a dyslexic have a word in their head, well, it may not look the way it's supposed to. This is why we start with this word, one single word, to establish it so it works. And then we run a checklist of that word. And all we do is ask questions. Show the word. You know what it is? Yeah, memorize it. Put it down. Spell it out loud. And what you do is listen to them when they spell it out loud. And if it sounds like C, A, T, you know there is space between the letter C and A. It should not be there. Right? Normally people who are good at spelling, they spell it C-A-T, backward T-A-C. A dyslexic usually doesn't do that. And they're going to struggle with it. What's going to happen here is that you're going to spell it out loud. You're going to ask them a question. Was that correct? So they spell it, for example, C-A-T. Was it correct? It was correct. So if you ask them the question, was that correct? And they say yes, you will give them feedback. Yes, it was. The second answer could be is, they got unsure. And the third one is, no, they were dead wrong. Now, usually when a shorter word like this one, it's not that difficult. Right? What it will be with words that don't spell so well. And that's what you're going to fix later on. But the first thing we need to create is this baseline, and there's a lot of repetition involved here. Because after you have, also to spell it out loud, they're going to do that every time. And you're always going to ask the question, was that correct or not? And listen to what I said, is it correct or not? You always ask them that kind of question. Was that correct or not? Because you need to give them a comparison to go from. So, once they spell the word forward, and you may hear something that, there is space between the letters, it might not be, sometimes, they're pretty good at, then you ask them to do the same thing and spell it backwards. Show them the word, memorize it, spell it backwards. T-E-C. Was that correct or not? And you wait for their response. And sometimes they will say, they'll take some time before they, give you feedback, because they have it verified in their own heads. And they go, yeah, I think it was, and you can tell them that, yeah, that was correct. Sometimes they will spell it and they will say it was correct, but it's not. You have to give them the feedback. Then show them the word again and say, did you notice what letter was missing? Because sometimes they do know, sometimes they don't. If you do know, and you can, find, oh yeah, I forget the letter, spell it again, memorize it, spell it again. So what you do is this kind of ritual, if you like. You are showing them the word, don't tell it, you don't need to. And when people spell a word or read, they usually have the word this far away. They don't have, and the letters are kind of this big and black on a white background. Because next thing you do, once you can confirm they can spell the word, forward to backward, it's easy, like see it easy, and it's correct, they know it's correct. You have built the foundation. Sounds kind of crazy, right? Is that enough to read? No, not yet. But you have to give them success, because here's the thing, what happens when you start taking a new word, they may struggle, right? And when you struggle, if you're dyslexic, you get frustrated. And you get frustrated, you usually get angry at some point. And you get avoidance. You don't want to do it because it's fucking, hard to fucking do it. I'm sorry for my swearing, but, I can't really, because it is fucking difficult, right? So when you take a new word that may, like this or whatever, right? And then you ask them to memorize it. You don't need to tell them. If they recognize it, good. You just show them, and you just put it down and say, spell it. And they will spell it. Maybe they will spell it correctly, maybe they do not. Maybe they take a lot of time between each letters, and that's what you're listening for. When they spell it out loud, they go R, I, G, because they have to verify each letter in the word, H, T. It takes space between each letter. And you don't want to hear that. You want to hear R, I, G, H, T. Right? Backward, T. Usually what happens is they go, oh. And then when you have to repeat it, if they, starting to struggle, you show them the word again. Oh yeah. T, H, G, I, R. Was that correct or not? I think so. Was it? That's what you do, over and over again, until it becomes easier and easier to spell it forward and backward for them. Once you get to the point where you can spell it out loud, confirm it's correct, because you ask me a question, was that correct or not? And they say, yeah. And you just show them, yes it was. You keep doing that over and over again. And you take a word that's, could be any word they struggle with. Because here's the thing, what the brain will do after a while. It will, after 3 to 5 words, maybe up to 10, depending on who it is, but usually after 3 to 5 words, the brain, if you do this, your brain catches on the pattern and will start doing this on its own. It's out to update itself. Once you learn the baseline, once you can apply it for 1 to 2 extra words, they know how to fix the words themselves. And then that's when the brain starts to update itself and you get overcoming dyslexia. Because people who read, they do this. So, what about the checklist? So once you establish the word cat, that's what I call this the cat model. Because cats, I like cats. I don't have one, but I like them. And I like dogs too. You can use the word dog, a short word. Don't, well, I'm gonna start doing this, and I'm gonna start with the word National Encyclopedia. And the dyslexic will look at you and go, what? Should you really start using that as a baseline? No. You can do that later on when you teach them how to break down long words. Like National Encyclopedia. When I did that kid, in the lecture I did almost 20 years ago, I taught him the word National Encyclopedia, to spell it forward and backward in 45 minutes. He couldn't believe it. His mom couldn't believe it. And I was like, yeah, you can do it, man. So what's the checklist? The checklist is this. Since we're starting with the word of cat, you ask them, with the word cat, and remember to ask these kind of questions, comparison. Are the letters in your head black or in another color? Are the letters in the word cat black or another color? Repeat the question if you need to. Always repeat it and always make a comparison. Is it black or another color? So that's the first thing. You check the colors of the word. Second thing, you check the background color. Sometimes they have a color, white, black letters on white background. Or they have, is the background white or another color or no color at all? It could be transparent. Some people, have transparent. They don't just see the words, in space, in front of them like that. Then you ask them how big are the letters, and you don't ask them how big are the letters, you ask them how big or small are the letters, and you can show them with your hands like this, and ask the kid, your kid in this case, show me with your hands how big the letters are. You can get some surprising result, answers there. Some people will say, they're like 5 meters, they say. And I said, are they close by? And they say, yeah. And that's why they look like this when they try to read. So what you want to do then, if their letters are big, you tell them to shrink them down so they can see them clearly and show them like this in front of you, about this size, right? Then you ask them if they can, are the letters of the word three-dimensional or two-dimensional? Are they flat or, are they clear or fuzzy? Always ask these kind of questions, right? I'm gonna write down a list at the end of this video and post it so you can, run that list yourself. My head is telling me to, I'm tired here, and I don't want to run the checklist here myself all the time, because you get the general idea. All you do, create the word cat, make sure they spell it out loud, ask a question, spell it, and they will spell CAT, was it correct or not? And they say yes, and you confirm it, yes it was. And then spell it backwards, TUC, was that correct or not? And say, yeah it was. And you can show them the word to verify that. So that's, because you have to know if they do it correctly or not and if they spell it out loud, that will help you identify if you make progress or not with them. And you have to understand, you don't need to, there is no rush here, you have to be patient, depending because I don't know what kind of dyslexia your kid have. I don't know if it's an easy case, organizing it up. Running the checklist will organize up the way other people read. And if your kid lacks a function or a function is not working properly, they will struggle with this stuff. Be patient and tell them to adjust so the word will look like this in front of them. Sometimes they have trouble with colors. They can't see black letters on a white background, for example, which most people have. You can always make sure they pick colors that are very good contrast, if that's the case. If they had trouble with the words kind of moving away, ask them, give them a simple metaphor, because kids are kids. Make them tape it, hammer it down with a nail. Give them easy metaphors like that. The reason why words move away is because people can have words around them. I worked with a kid, a girl, and she had all these 6-7 pages of being dyslexic and all that stuff, and I look at I throw the papers away actually. I said, this doesn't help me, it just tells me everything that's wrong about you. So I want you to spell cat. And she spelled cat, and I did some other tests, and I said, where are the words? Because when I also run the checklist, right? And she was, I don't really know, can you point to it? And I already knew it was behind it, because I can see stuff like that. One of the skill sets I developed over the years. And I said, why don't you move the words in front of you instead? Doesn't that make it easier? And she said, yes. And she was not dyslexic anymore. Sometimes that's all it takes. Sounds too good to be true? Still, that's how it works. her mom gave feedback later on that her kid been in school, she'd been in gym class the next couple of days or something like that. And the gym teacher asked her mom, what happened to her? And her mom was like, what do you mean? Well, I was giving your daughter an instruction what to do here, and she understood and did it immediately. Yeah, well, she'd never been able to do that before. Sometimes when you give people instructions how to do things, like this, people dyslexic, they have not an ability to translate that into behaviors, what to do. They can't make that happen. But sometimes when you fix and overcome the dyslexia, they can start doing things they couldn't do before. It's pretty amazing, really. So that's it. So I repeat this again. What you do, don't tell them, show them. You recognize this word? And they go, yeah. And by the way, the next letter is W. You remember I started to spell a word in the first video? And your brain is, what's the word? Maybe you have to go back and watch it again, I guess. So you show them the word, tell them you recognize this, and they go, yeah, okay, can you memorize it? Spell it. Spell it out loud, and then you say, was that correct or not? And you have the, and you look at the word, and you go, spell it out loud, and they spell it out, was that correct or not? And they go, 3 answers, it's correct. You give it, and they tell you, oh yeah, it was correct. They give the feedback, yes, it was. If it wasn't, and they can still be absolutely 100% sure they spelled it correctly. Usually not with this word. But if you start using other words like right, or for example right, that might happen. They forget the H or something like that, or the G, or the I, whatever it is. And instead of just telling them, show them. Right? So when you start running the next word, could be any word, you pick a word they have trouble with, not that too long, just this is like 5 letters or something like that. Because it doesn't matter how long it is, you just make it easier. So they're gonna maybe struggle with this. Right? They look at the word and go memorize it. The letters look black and white, and you have run the checklist with the word cat. So you should run this with this too, a little bit. And then you go memorize it, spell it, put it in front of you. That's why when you work with them, you just show them the word like this in front of them. Right? You do this, you spell it out loud, W-R-I-G-H-T. You ask them, was it correct or not? And they go, yeah. That's what you're waiting for. And what you're then waiting for is to listen to them if it goes faster and faster, because if they struggle too much with the new word, go back and repeat the word cat. So what you do then again is say, okay, repeat this word, spell it, C-T, backwards, T-C, was it correct or not? Yes, it was. Good, feels better, and you go, yeah. Now, and then you go back to repeat that, maybe cat a couple of times, and then you go back to, okay, let's try this again. Repeat it, memorize it, boom, spell it. W-R-I-G-H-T, boom, was it correct? Ah, it was correct. And you go, yes, it was. Now, spell it backwards. You need to see it again, okay? Spell it backwards. Even if you can read and spell normally, like everybody else, spelling it backwards interrupts your natural pattern. Even for someone who spells it. So usually what happens when I see people working with this, in the paper they do this, they look at the paper when they spell it out loud. Was it correct or not? And they go, yeah. Spell it backward, because if you're going to have to track them when they're spelling it backwards, it's much easier if you have the T-H-E. Was that correct or not? And they say yes, and you look at it, and you say, no, it wasn't. Do you recognize which letter you left out? Or maybe even add an extra letter that shouldn't be there. Sometimes it can tell you, sometimes it cannot, and just go memorize it again. You do this over and over again with the next word until they can do it the same way they can do with the word cat. So it's not advanced in any way, it's just feedback, asking questions. waiting for the response from your kid, give them the proper feedback, repeat again if they need to, repeat again if they need to, until it's stable. The stability here is depending on how fast your memory is built, basically, right? Because if you can't do something, you have to learn to do it by repetition. Repetition is one of the things with memory. Basically, memory is formed in two ways. One, strong emotional incident, or repetition over time. That's basically, how memory works. If you repeat something, if you take 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, it's 25. And if you repeat it enough times, it's 25. You don't need to calculate it anymore, you just remember it. If you can do math that way, it's much easier. E is the next letter. So, when I spell the word over a long period of time, even someone who can spell words and read normally is gonna struggle with it. Because if there is space between letters in your head, it's gonna show up when they spell it. They're gonna look at the word and go, Wright. That was great. Yeah, it was. I can double check it with my own checklist here. Ooh, it was right. I'm happy. So, you start with the word cat. As you may notice here, I'm already repeating a lot of things because I have to. It's not show them the word. Recognize this? Yes. Spell it out loud. Turn away the paper. Spell it. C-H-E. Was it correct now? Yes, it was. And you give them the yes, it was. Show them the word again. Spell it backwards. Spell this word backward. Spell it backward. T-A-C. Was it correct or not? Yes, it was. And what you're listening for is that they spell it faster and faster. And they know it's correct. That's one of the things that's going to happen with memory. Is that the more stable the memory is, the more they can retrieve it, the easier it does, the faster it goes. That's how memory works. We have a little bit of sun today. It's kind of a midwinter soon. A couple of months we're going to have a lot of snow. But now the sun is getting a little bit lower. This is midday actually. And I'm very tired. But I wanted you to, understand that the process here is feedback, patience, repetition. Show them the word. Create a stable single word. Could be cat, could be dog, could be something simple otherwise that you know that they maybe like. Cat mostly is something people enjoy, especially kids. And repeat it. Give them feedback when they do it correctly, when they do it wrong. Don't tell them what they did wrong. That's important. If they do something wrong, don't tell them. Just show them the word. Do you know what you did? And then sometimes they can catch it. Oh yeah, I forgot that letter. Okay, try it again. And if it's a longer word, that's usually what happens. Oh, I forgot the H, they say. Yeah. Memorize it again. Repeat the process. And just give them the proper feedback. And if they struggle, you just go back and repeat the first word you've done. Establish the baseline. Because you don't want to keep struggling with a new word. Take a break, show them the word cat. Spell cat out loud, C-A-T, T-A-C. Got it. B is no, well, they know it's correct and it's easy. And then you can take a break for a few minutes and then try the new word again, whatever it might be. It could be right, it could be something else. Do it like that over and over again until the new word works the same way the word cat does. Somewhere between 3 to 10 words is enough before the brain starts to update itself with words and such, and then at some point they just overcome their dyslexia. So the important part here is the word cat, checklist, to check that the word looks the way it's supposed to, that the letters are in appropriate size, that they can see the word cat clearly, and that it stays there. It doesn't move away. They can look at it and verify it. And if they can't do that, don't move to the new word. Make sure this is stable. Make sure you checked everything. Double check it if you need to, triple check it. Make sure it's stable. And instead of telling them because you don't need to tell people who are dyslexic things, because they're overwhelmed in the auditory channels, usually. Show them the word. Spell this. CT. Was it correct or not? Yes. What color are the letters? Are they black or another color? How big are the letters? How small are the letters? Show with your hands. And you keep running this checklist that I'm listing here at the end of this video, and ask that question. Are they big or they small? Are they two-dimensional, three-dimensional? Are they flat? Are they fuzzy? Are they clear? And such. And you ask them in comparison question. If you do that, it makes it easy for them to answer your question. And if you ask them where the letters are or the word is, sometimes they don't know. So what you do then, ask them, can you point? And they sometimes point like this behind them. So the word is behind you and they go, oh yeah, there it is. And you just tell them, move it in front of you. If the letters are very big or very, very small, sometimes that can happen too. Make them bigger, make them smaller, until they are the appropriate size for you to see them clearly. This is what people actually do when they read. People who read really well, they do this. They have letters, and they are smaller so they can see the whole word at one time. Like right or right, or which. Because if you're going to listen to the auditory, how to spell a word, it's not going to work. It's not precise enough for our brain. Our brain loves this stuff when it can see it. And we have to learn to see the word and then spell it correctly. And instead of telling people how it's supposed to be, you just give them proper feedback. They will learn this much easier then. You can't tell people how to do it because it won't work. They may understand you, but if they lack the function, they can't simply do it. So if you have your kid with this kind of form of dyslexia where they have a function that's not working to 100%, you have to repeat the same thing a lot. Sometimes when I was working with kids, I worked with 2 hours. Repeating the same word, cat, and then a certain next word. Once they start to struggle, I went back to the cat, repeat that a few times, then I went back to it. And I just, because I have the skill set, I just, notice when they start, getting, frustrated, I said, go back to cat again, repeat that. Then I just run the checklist, check everything, because you have to repeat this until and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, because you're building a memory for them. Once it's stable and they can access it easily, that's when they can start spelling the word faster. It's T-E-C, C-H-E. E-R. So the word I spelled over 2 videos was shower. So, since it's spread out over a long time, your brain now has to take one single letter over a long period of time. That makes it incredibly difficult to track. My sister's husband, I talked to him a couple of years ago now, and about my work with dyslexia and such, and he said, oh yeah, but I read it slowly, he said. And I was kind of curious, what do you mean by slow? Well, I read one letter at a time. And I looked at him, seriously? Oh yeah. How long does it take you to read the newspaper? Oh, I don't do that. He was into rally cars and such, driving cars really fast in rallies. He read one of those magazines, it took him about 3 months. And I said, ooh. And I told him to show me how he did it, and I said, and then I gave him, why don't you look at the whole word at once, like this? And I told him, and he basically was in his head. And 6 months later, he and my sister was here to have a cup of coffee, and she was telling, she was in this book club and she was reading this book, and then, oh yeah, by the way, you're reading that book. Oh, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm almost finished with it. And I looked at him and said, you do know that I know that you were reading very slowly not that long ago. And he kind of looked at me and go, I did? Because once you, can do something you couldn't do before, you kind of forget you had the problem. I work with a lot of dyslexics, and the parents are very surprised, but since the kid now can read, it's not a big deal, tell me. Even though they spent 5 years or something like that in some cases, we're trying to trying to get help everywhere, from every instance, and none of them worked. Except my technology did work. Because it builds a memory from people that reads this way. And if you're a parent, make sure you're not dyslexic yourself, because even though if you have a checklist and like this, because when they spell it out, you can just do this and just follow along, right? So don't be a dyslexic, because it just makes it harder for your kid. And this is what you do. Repeat this, establish the baseline. Once that's stable with the cat, start with a new word until that's as stable as that. Run the checklist with the cat so you have the proper baseline, success. Get the feedback protocol in place for yourself when you ask the question. You just go, okay. Today we're going to start with this. As you notice, I repeat a lot of things here. I want you to spell this word. You recognize it? And your kid go, yeah, okay, spell it out loud. And they go, C-A-T. And you say, yes, was that correct or not? Because they have to verify it first. Because if you tell them that was correct, good job. No, ask them the question first. Show them the word, spell it. They spell it, C-A-T. Shouldn't be that difficult for most of them. And you ask them, was it correct or not? And they say, yeah. And you give them the feedback. Yes, it was. If you don't do it this way, it won't work. Right? Because they have to learn to verify that they spell the word properly and correctly. And what you listen for is that you do it faster when they spell it. Alright. Can you do it again? Alright, you spell it C-A-T, and it usually goes a little bit faster. Was that correct or not? Yes, it was. Now, once you can do that, you can run the checklist. Okay, is the letter black on the word of cat? Or is it some other color? Is the background white or transparent or some other color? You then do run the checklist. How big are the letters or how small are the letters? Show me with your hands. How wide are the letters? Are the letters clear or not? Or the word in front of you or somewhere else? Always ask a comparison question. Makes it easy for them to answer your question. And once they have this stable, spell it out loud, C-A-T, J-C, correct or not? Yeah, it was correct, yeah. Then you go next to the next word, whatever that might be. Take a word that you struggle with, because the more difficult it might be for them, the better it is actually. And you show them the word, you recognize this, okay, memorize it. Same way you memorize cat. Alright, you got it? Okay, put it down, spell it out loud. And they may go W-R-I-G-H-T, which would be really good, by the way. And you also, was that correct? And you go, yeah, it was correct. And you give them the feedback, yes, it was. And if you repeat this with them with the new word until it works the same way as the word cat, once those two words are stable the same way, then you move to the next word. Never jump too early, because because dyslexia is different for everybody, right? That means they will respond differently, and I don't know what kind of memory issue or functional issue is going on with your kids. So, you know, just repeat the word cat. Once you're frustrated or struggle with a new word, go back to cat, repeat it a few times. Always build a success. Never leave them in frustration. Don't work too long with it. Work 5-10 minutes. Since they, work every day, you're home every day, you can just go, okay, at dinner, or just before dinner or after dinner, work for 5 minutes, spell the word cat, C-A-T, was it correct or not? Yes, it was. Okay, give the feedback, it was. And then just repeat the new word. Okay, take the new word, show the word. And if you do this, at some point, the brain will catch on and start auto-updating itself with other words. So they will at some point just be able to read. Because they've start doing the same thing like I or other people do when they actually read. People in the field of dyslexia is trying to diagnose people and, for figuring out why they are dyslexic and what's wrong with them. I'm just teaching people how people actually read. And this protocol established that. It works. I've been doing it over 20 years. And it works. So I'm going to leave you with that. And the checklist is going to follow. And remember to ask the question in a way that allows them to compare. Are the letters big or small? Or the letters in the color black or some other color? If you do that and give them the proper feedback in the proper stage, never tell them they're doing things wrong, never tell them how to do it, and you'll be fine. So it's very simple. It's just a feedback protocol repeating over again, because repetition builds memory. Because if the words are not stable and they look in a specific way, you can't really read in an easy way. And as you may already be figuring out now, the word I started to spell in the first video, shower, S-H-O-W-E-R, is much easier if you do it that way versus spreading it out over 2 videos with a lot of time between them, each letter. That's what it's like for many dyslexic. They have letters. So I met dyslexic who have 5-meter words. I met dyslexic who have words behind them. I met dyslexic that the words are falling away. And you have to, teach them simple or easy metaphor, whatever you call it. Nail them with a hammer. Stample them. Use the metaphor that's appropriate for your kid. If the kid have a trouble visualizing and seeing the word, ask them, if they can see a TV screen or a monitor, because they play video games. And you usually can, and just tell them to put the word on the screen. It actually works. And they go, oh yeah, okay. I had some dyslexic doing that, I have trouble with that. Can you see, you have playing video games? Oh yeah. Can you see the video monitor? Put the word on the video monitor and they go, okay. Much easier for them, because they already have a circuit developed for that. But that's going to be in the third video, which I'm going to make later on for this. Anyway, be patient, repeat the question, give them proper feedback, don't rush it. Stabilize the word cat, or if you choose another one, first, and listen to them when they spell it, if it goes faster and faster, and if you can make, proper feedback. Anyway, good luck. I'm rather make it better, that's what I... So I wanted to add a little bit of a shorter, repetitive... So when I worked with a kid previously, right, I asked them to, you recognize this word, and they say cat, okay, I want you to spell it out loud, put it down, they spell it out loud, and what I do, I listen for how fast they spell the word, what kind of space there is between the letters, and if they spell it like C-A-T, there's a lot of space between the C and A. If they spell it like C-A-T, still space between the letters. And what you actually just listen for improvement is that it goes faster and faster. That means that the access to the word goes faster and faster, and they can verify it faster and faster. And every time they spelled it, I asked them, was it correct or not? And now wait, this is very important, more important people think and understand, is that when they try to verify if they spell it correctly, you have to wait for them to finish it. And don't interrupt them. They will either give you the right answer, the wrong answer, or maybe be unsure, and because they're trying to access the word. Once you've done this a few times with the cat, because we want to establish the baseline, then you ask them to spell it backwards to do the same thing. Once you think they have cat down both backwards and forward, then you run this checklist, right? You check for colors of the letters, how big they are, and what you tell them to do is to put it in front of them, basically give or take around this space in front of the face, so they can see the word clearly, and so on. And when you do that, ask them the question, how big or small are the letters? You can show with your hands. If they have trouble, for example, seeing the word, they can imagine a computer monitor or something like that and put the word in the computer monitor. That's one way to overlap the, the visual sense and such. And And each time you have made all this adjustment for them, you ask them again, by showing them. Do not tell people things, especially when they're dyslexic, because if you tell them the word, sometimes you have to, but they will engage the auditory circuit of the word. You don't need that. Right? Just show them. Spell that. Listen to it. Ask them, was it correct or not? Wait for their response. Important. They have to go inside and verify if it was correct or not. And they will say yes, no, or be unsure. And that's the whole process. Then once you think they, this is stable both forward to backward, you run the checklist, they can see the word clearly, the letters are, manageable, they have the whole word inside. Then you bring in the new word, whatever that might be for your kid, and you do the same thing. Memorize this. And they look at it, and they will memorize it, and I'll tell me when you're done, when you're ready for it, and then you spell it. Now, you can also do this when you do that, so it's easy to follow if you do it correctly or not. That's what I did, because it makes it easy for me also. And then, since it's a new word that they struggle with, they may not do it correctly. What you do then is to ask them the same thing: was they correct or not? Doesn't matter if you hear it is wrong. Just ask them the same question. They have to go inside and verify it, and they will say, maybe they would say yes when they spell it wrong, and you say no, that was incorrect. And then instead of course fixing it for them, you just show them the word again. Can you identify what you did wrong? And they may be able to identify, oh, I forgot that letter, G or H or something like that. All right, memorize it again, fix it, spell it again. And you do that until they can spell the word forward. And if they get frustrated and annoyed, or it becomes a little bit too much with the new word, take a break, go back and spell this word again. Just show them. Spell this word a few times, forward. C-A-T. Was it correct or not? Yes, that's correct. Give them feedback. Spell it backwards. Because that will reset them, because this is what you need to do with every word. Because you need to, the thing that here with the new word is that the brain has now to have to figure out how to make this word the same as when you spell the word cat. That will take time, depending on your kid, right? What kind of version of dyslexia they have. If you're lucky, it's just a matter of organizing it, and if you've done the checklist, that alone should, start your kid on the journey of, fast improvement. If your kid lack a function because it's not functioning properly, this will take more time. And a lot of things can happen. I can't predict everything that will happen. Sometimes, I have a hard time keeping the word stable. It wants to disappear. You use a simple metaphor in that case, or an easy metaphor, as I like to say. You take since they were kids, you take a hammer and nail it, or you put it on the computer screen, because that usually is stable for them. Or, you put glue around the word so they can, make it stick in there. Because it actually requires neurological energy to keep words stable. Most people don't know that. So I can't predict everything that can happen with the dyslexic. This is why we don't fix them. We just tell them, you need to have the word like this, stable. That's why we start with the word cat to establish the baseline. Very important. Because you want to build success for them. You don't want to make it hard for them. They already struggle, so doesn't need to add to that. So you repeat it, you give them feedback, you ask the question, was it correct or not when they spell it out loud. And what you listen for is how fast you can spell it correctly. They will struggle at first, especially when the words they struggle with. Once they get the hang of that forward, you ask them to spell it backwards, right? You show them the word. Memorize this. W-R-I-A-G-H-T. Was it correct or not? Then go in journal and go, yeah, it was correct. And you say, yes, it was correct. Once you get a hang of that, you go, okay, now spell it backwards. I need to look at it, and you look at it, and they go T, H, G, I, R, W. And since you looked at it and you asked them, did you spell it correctly? No. Yeah, I did. And you say, yes, you did. But it didn't go fast at first. You never did, never do. But they go faster and faster after a while. And the reason why you don't need to jump to new words so that fast. So you just work with the two words. The one, they establish the baseline, and the second one, to repeat it until they can do it the same way as cat. Once they can do that, both forwards and backwards, you have done their checklist. And sometimes things will change for them over time. And you can just, ask them questions, if are the words the same size, have they changed the sizes or not, something like that. Are the colors the same? Do you still see the word clearly? Do you have the whole oversight? And so on. It's not difficult. It's just you have to repeat it, because this is how you build the organization for them, and you just tell them to, if the letters are very big or somewhere else, or a different color, you just tell them to change the color, tell them to change the size of the word. Nothing of this is, static. It can be adjusted to, and it can change over time. Right? That's for people. Right? So, and since you have the checklist, you have the organization, you ask them the question. This is a lot of repetition, by the way. Now, the difference between you as a parent and me is I have a lot of skill sets because I develop all this stuff, right? But I have to work really intensively with kids. I usually work for an hour or two with them when I was working. You have the benefit of having them home every day. So once you have them home, and you can run this for 5-10 minutes every day. So if you do this every day for a month, you have done it 30 times. That's a lot of exposure to repeating things, right? And during that process, you should have, them being able to, to put cat and the new word stable within a short amount of time. But I can't tell you exactly because people are different, right? So you do that, repeat that, and remember that when you ask the questions, ask them, was it correct or not, and wait for the response. Important. Was they correct or not? Wait until they're done and answer you. If they do things wrong, don't tell them how to do it, how to fix it. Just show them the word and say, no, that was not correct. Can you identify what you did? And sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. And if they can't, you tell them you missed the letter H or G or I or whatever, right? And then, also memorize it again. Because this is how your brain works. Once you're done, give or take, depending on, it could take 2 words, sometimes it can take 5 words. But the process is this. This is how you have to fix them. Because a dyslexic doesn't have a reference point of accessing words and retrieve them so they know it's correct or not. Usually, I'm a dyslexic, have 6 different ways to spell a word. One of them was correct. That's not a good way to, read and spell words. So, and this works, right? So if you keep doing this, you have the longer video if you want to watch it again, obviously. And this is just to, give you the point of the importance of wait for the response. Be patient, wait for the response. Because they need to be able to verify if the word is correctly spelled when they spell it themselves. If they can't do that, they're always going to struggle. So be patient. Ask them the question. If they spell it correctly, you tell them that. If they spell it incorrectly, you tell them that. And instead of trying to fix what they did, just show them the word. Important again. I repeat it so many times so you can get the pattern yourself. Don't tell them. Show them. Because that's how people read. Right? And good luck.